Boats and hoes, boats and hoes. I gotta have me my boats and hoes.
All right, welcome everyone to Bolts and Hose, episode 40.
How you say it?
No, I said 40.
40. So it is episode 40. I mean that. 40.
Did you know that, man?
I did not.
So every week we start with welcome to Bolts and
Santosh,
Hose.
how do you say 40 in Hindi?
Chalice.
Chalice. So this is episode Chalice.
Episode Chalice.
Cheers, gentlemen. Cheers.
To episode Chalice.
Welcome to our podcast, Bolts and Hose.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
got some first timers here with us today. Some legends in the industry.
On a legend of a podcast.
On a legend of a podcast.
Yes.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I like that. I like it.
Bolts and Hose. We don't mention gaskets, but that's kind of the topic today, right?
Yes, we got some gasket talk today.
And more specifically, isolation gaskets.
So we got
Best kind of gaskets.
That's what I say.
You know a little bit about isolation gaskets.
Some. Yeah, some.
A little bit.
A little bit. I've only spent 20 plus years trying to learn this gasket.
You look like you're 28. So
Yes,
how
I
did that-
started when I was 8. Yeah.
Okay. Well done. So talking isolation gaskets, we got Santosh here from Dubai.
Dubai.
How long have you been here? Where'd you get into town?
In Dubai?
No, when did you get into Houston for
1
this
week.
trip? 1 week ago.
Yeah.
So you've been here for a week,
Yeah.
enjoying some time with our sealing folks, our bolt folks,
Of course, yes.
hanging out with Mr. Cole.
Yeah.
Any shisha smoking?
2 times shisha.
Of course.
2 times?
Of course.
Okay.
One at my house, we tried out a new hookah.
Hookah.
pipe. Yeah.
Do you like the pipe? He showed me a picture
Yeah,
of it.
it's a fancy one.
It's
That
a
is a
fancy.
fancy.
Everything he does is fancy. Of course it's fancy.
Well, nothing but the best for Santosh.
Of course. Yes, of course. And then Mr. Kramer just rolled into town today, right?
2 hours ago.
Well, love to have you.
Just for
there.
a short trip.
Sure.
Visit.
It's a nice
We were fortunate
surprise.
enough
Just-
to have him come by.
I
Have
heard
him in town.
I heard there was a podcast going on about isolation gaskets.
Yeah.
Changed my flight immediately to come to Houston instead of Denver.
Is that all it took?
That's all it
To
took.
get you-
Hey, if this podcast was going to talk about isolation gaskets, then I was going to show up.
And you got to see the big guy.
And I got to see the world's biggest nut.
The world's largest
Which
nut.
was just a bonus.
Yeah, of course.
No, there's been several tourists come by today to check out Big Tex.
I know.
Yeah, not just you, Ben, but there was, who was the other guy? He was like a forklift.
Forklift guy taking pictures. I think this week we had 2 salespeople come and like post online, like take selfies with their nut. I mean, it's crazy.
So the plan is working. Build the world's biggest nut,
And
and
they
people
will
will
come.
come. Right?
The field of dreams of
Yes.
nuts.
I mean, I grew up hoping that somebody would want to take a picture with my
With
nut.
your nut.
Yeah,
But just one. Just one.
and here we are.
It's just your big one.
There you are, living your dream.
It always goes downhill too. I mean, it's just amazing.
Rapid.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's
3
crazy.
minutes in.
So let's talk about what are isolation gaskets, guys. I think we should probably turn it over and let Ben and Santosh talk.
Yes.
So let's talk about this, because isolation gaskets are something that's a little bit of a mystery. I mean, people think about spiral wound gaskets, metal gaskets, soft paper type fiber reinforced gaskets. But when it comes to isolation gaskets, it's very specialized, and a lot of people don't know you can use an isolation gasket in a lot of those applications where those other gaskets are used normally.
Yeah.
And most people don't think about an isolation gasket.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's very effective. It's a great seal.
But it's a great seal, and it's a gasket, so of course the primary purpose is to seal, so it has to be excellent at sealing first. I guess because we have a worldwide audience now, I do want to just get on my soapbox for a minute about
Yes, come on.
isolation versus insulation.
Okay.
Insulation gaskets don't exist.
Okay.
Insulation is heat, thermal.
Okay.
Isolation is electricity. So that's why they're called isolation gasket. A lot of people are going to call them insulation gasket. That's okay.
You hear it all the time.
You can correct them if you want. It depends on what.
So this is
your
my-
relationship with them.
This is my stupidity, my ignorance in this. I always thought an insulation gasket was one of those cheap G10s. Like,
No.
and then an isolation gasket was more of a
this.
BCS
Yeah.
type
No,
gasket. That's
both are isolation
Okay.
gaskets, right? So obviously, because isolation has to do with electricity, electrical isolation, that's really their number one thing is seal, right? Great, excellent sealing properties here, excellent sealing properties even in this style, which we see a lot in the field as well. But the secondary purpose of this is to stop electricity from going from one side of that voltage connection to the other side, right? And there's a number of reasons why you might want that, right?
Sure.
You could have an impressed current cathodic protection system on it. Those only work for a certain distance, right? It's like anything, it's only good for so long.
Right.
So you got to break that up into chunks.
Yep.
Right? You also may not want to put that current onto, say, your compressors or your tanks or something else. So you'd want to isolate that protective current from those big sources that would suck up all of that protective current.
Yep.
The other thing is just, you want to isolate it from just the naturally occurring ground currents that will get on transmission lines, right? Because ground current's not a lot, but when you put a big old pipeline running across the earth for miles and miles and miles, right? Electricity is just like water. It's going to take the path of least resistance. That metal pipe is a lot easier.
It's a lot more fun to ride.
A lot more fun to ride on than the dirt, right? So you want to break it up there, stop those currents from building up to where they can cause corrosion, premature failure of the pipe. So it's about safety, it's about protecting the pipelines, making them last longer.
Sure.
And they look cool.
They do
right?
look cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a cool looking gasket.
Yeah.
So you would say the biggest application for an isolation gasket is probably pipeline, specifically underground?
Yes.
Is that safe to say?
Yeah, underground and above ground transmission lines.
Okay.
Right. That's where you're going to see just. He can talk to it like project work, right?
So one of the largest-
such big pipeline projects.
The largest market in the world is the Middle East. That's
Yes.
where
Yeah.
Santosh has such a special place in his heart for this
So
product line.
Saudi Aramco and ADNOC and PDO, they use a lot of isolation kits. PDO, they use non-fire safe. They go with these two. Whereas offshore ADNOC and Saudi Aramco, they go with fire safe with metal core with high pressure rating gaskets. These gaskets are used without metal core. These are used 600 psi, 600 pressure rating. And generally they go with 900, but we limited for 600 because of the pricing and stuff. But above the 600, metal core is recommended. And dissimilar flanges. There are so many.
That's a good point. I forgot to mention dissimilar metals.
I almost mentioned that.
That's the third application.
Okay.
For
Dissimilar
galvanic
metals.
corrosion.
Galvanic corrosion. Yeah.
So if you have a carbon steel flange
Yeah.
mating up with a stainless
Steel valve.
Yeah,
or something,
right, sure.
Yep. Yeah, that
And
makes sense.
RTJ flange, RF flange, no need to change anything, just put this gasket and apart from the cathodic protection and the conductivity, electricity, maybe one gasket, no need to change the flanges and material grade of the flanges. It's a great product and one gasket can solve any problem.
It's a big market here in the States, but in the Middle East,
Massive market.
huge.
Massive
Why
market.
is that? What's the difference? I mean, why is the Middle East a bigger market than the United States?
Maybe offshore people, they think to protect, offshore they do with fire safe to protect the rigs on any incidents on the fire. Onshore they go with non-fire safe in the Middle East as well. And offshore they think to protect the rigs to massive explosions.
Sure.
For that purpose they go with
I've got a different opinion on why.
Okay.
I think it's political, but not to go down that
I'm
road.
probably going down the same
Yeah,
road.
but I mean, we don't build a lot of new offshore platforms. We don't build a lot of new pipelines.
Right.
They are building
Constantly.
new platforms, new pipelines.
That makes sense.
And so the
It's
number
newer technology.
Yes, and it is, right? And,
Sure.
and also I think that some of our predecessors, the early folks in this business, did a great job in the Middle East, explaining, teaching, educating that
makes
market about this, and it just really took hold there, and it built so much there.
Right.
And I think it worked so well. I mean, even though the guys did a great job marketing it there,
Well,
it was proven very quickly that it was very effective.
I mean,
gasket.
this gasket has been available to the market in some way, shape, or form for 40-something years.
Yeah.
Same with this one.
Sure.
So it's not new technology. It's just, I think you said at the beginning, people think I should only use this when the spec or the drawing or the plan says isolation gasket.
Right.
But it does solve a lot of other problems. So dissimilar metals is one, which we can get super nerdy about what that is really about. It's just, one metal is going to corrode to protect the other one because they can touch and see each other. Right? This makes them not touch. The other one is dissimilar flanges in the sense of RTJ to raised face. This gasket off the shelf, same sealing location, doesn't care whether it's made into a raised face or an RTJ. So if you got a super sharp new purchasing guy that comes in and it's like, hey, I'm gonna save you guys a ton of money on these valves that I found at Bob's yard, and they come out and they're all RTJs, and your piping's all raised face. Just put it in every time.
You're talking about a gasket that's got a thick metal core, so high pressure resistance.
Very high pressure.
And these things can be raised up to 2,500 flange class. And then you've got a PTFE seal on there that's very compressible, and it'll take a very low load to get it to seal. So comparable to other types of metal gaskets, it kind of is the best of both worlds in a lot of ways.
These are designed for 10,000, 5,000 as well. And as Ben mentioned, in the Middle East they call this one insulating gaskets. Not insulation, insulating gaskets. But we need to educate, we use the term, it's not insulating, it's isolation.
I took my platform to say that, but I actually gave up that fight a long time ago in correcting people. If they're willing to use it, no sense in the semantics of what it's called.
It's just like people calling in and saying, hey, I want a flex metallic gasket.
Same idea. You don't need to correct them. You know what they're saying.
It's like, I gotcha.
You know what they're saying. So, I don't know. This is, there's other pieces to these, right? Because it doesn't work just by sticking a gasket.
That's a good point.
So that's what we got. To isolate a flange, you need a few other components.
Let's see the other components.
What do you got? What's in the box?
The other side of this are the sleeves, right? So this is a package, and there's 8 of these, there's 12 of these in there. So this is the part that goes over the bolts. So when you put the two flanges together, this would slide in between the flange and the bolts, and it isolates the bolt from the flange. So again, your goal is to isolate the two flanges. The fact that you have metal bolts, that makes it difficult. So you have to isolate the bolts itself, and then you have washers. You'll have a metal and a G10, is what it is? G10 washer on to isolate the actual washer and nut as well. So the entire assembly, when you think about it, the gasket separates the two flanges, the raised face or flat face, like you're saying. The sleeves isolate the bolt itself, and then the washers isolate the actual nut from the rest of the flange.
Why do we have 2 washers?
So
2 different kinds.
So if you put too much load, and you're asking this rhetorical, because you're testing it, but my belief is that if you put a tremendous amount of load on it, you can crack this washer, and the metal seal on the backside, it helps distribute that load and separates it. So, is that good?
That was great.
And a lot of times the back side of the flange where the nut has been grinding on the back of that, it's not going to be a very flat surface, so it's going to be more prone to crack something soft. So this ensures that the seating surface for the softer washer is consistent.
That's exactly right. But when loaded evenly, a lot of people look at these and they say, oh, it's a plastic gasket. It's not plastic. Okay, it's glass epoxy, which is sheets of fiberglass dipped in a resin epoxy and then laid up on each other.
So it's strong.
It's very compressed under high loads. Very, very strong, especially when loaded evenly. I mean, the compressive strength of these things is very, very much higher than you would think. However, it can't take point load. Right? If you point load it, it's going to crack. Which is why Kris did a great job of explaining why we have the metal washer on the back of it.
Of course.
Maybe he might have listened to me say that twice.
I'm sure any other way I would learn it.
I don't know. Anything else about isolation gaskets?
So we have, I guess, this is kind of the plain Jane of the isolation gasket world, right? So this is the most common.
I always use car examples.
Okay.
That's a Honda Accord.
A Honda Accord.
Yep.
So it's
reliable, high mileage.
Everywhere.
It's everywhere.
All over.
Same all over.
Okay, so this is the next step up. So a metal core.
I might call that a Corvette.
A Corvette, really?
I was going to say the same.
I might call that a Corvette.
I like Corvettes.
I might call that a Corvette.
So this is the Corvette used in more I guess, critical applications.
Critical applications.
Yep.
Yeah. Higher pressure,
Yep.
maybe some H2S, maybe some CO2.
Okay.
You know, stuff that you want to be extra careful about
Sure.
keeping it in the pipe.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
Now-
then is there other types of isolation gaskets?
There's a Ferrari.
Okay.
There's a Ferrari.
I like Ferraris.
Yes, and that is the fire safe
Fire safe.
version of a steel core.
Okay. So what's the fire safe? Can you explain that? Like,
Yeah.
what's the difference between that and a fire safe?
Sure. So this, you would get a primary seal element like here. Typically, you're going to use a PTFE as the standard seal, but then you put a secondary seal element. Lots of people have done it different ways. The secondary seal just needs to be a fire safe seal.
Okay.
Right. And in our case, we're going to put a metal C-ring that's coated back there. Right. Metal seals, metal to metals, traditionally looked at as fire safe.
Sure.
Right. Should probably be clear about fire safe doesn't mean fireproof.
Right.
Right? It means it can withstand a certain amount of time of burning without leaking.
Okay.
You know, amazing.
Because the last thing you want is for a fire to happen, your gasket gets exposed to the fire.
Yep.
And then everything inside
And the
that
pipe comes out.
bursts, and then that internal media starts to feed the fire.
Yes.
So this is a way to prevent that from happening.
Sure.
And there's a standard test to that most gasket folks know is the 6MB test.
Okay.
And the Patriot gasket, as I understand it, passed
The very first time.
First time.
So
That's unusual.
Patriot Sealing has a fire
Fire
safe,
safe isolation
Isolation
gasket. They
gasket.
have a Ferrari.
and it passed on the first attempt.
First attempt.
Has that ever happened?
I'm gonna say no.
Really? It's never happened?
Well, I have tested, I think, close to 45 gaskets. at the
And you've
6MB.
never seen it?
I've never seen a gasket pass on the first attempt.
So if it, okay, let's just go back a step. If it doesn't pass, you tweak the
You
gasket.
tweak it. You
Yeah,
tweak
just
things.
makes it
Right? Okay,
smaller.
do I change my dimensions of the seal?
Or you don't change anything. And you
Because
just
it
keep-
passed the first
And then
time.
you just keep testing it until it passes.
Or you get a
all you
tester
need
where it's like a $100 bill.
Right. Well,
Got you.
let me say, we all know Matt at Yarmouth, and he's not going to let that. You can try to give him as many $100 bills as you want, but it ain't going to fly.
But it is possible for somebody to keep submitting the same gasket, because it's what, $4,000 a test, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And just keep testing until it
Just hope for the
passes.
best.
And once you get the pass, you're good. But
But-
it was impressive that
It was.
we submitted it one time and it passed.
Yeah.
So Patriot Sealing has a fire safe gasket. We have ADNOC approval.
Nothing to do, yeah.
So we're supplying these gaskets already all over the
We
world.
already started supplying to ADNOC with short-term immediate deliveries, like 1 week delivery. Nobody does in the Middle East market, which we are doing. Even though it's that much competition there, we got approved only because of the pricing and the immediate delivery. Before approval, they tried with us and they've been proven. And now they consider us and they approve all Patriot Sealing products.
So my historic experience with like a metal core gasket, if it's not in stock, I mean, it's a 4 to 6, sometimes 8 week lead time, right?
It can be.
Yeah.
But in our case, it's not that. We delivered around 3 million AE worth gaskets, fire safe alone, including 65 core material in 3 months' time.
Yeah. I'll say, having been making these gaskets for a long time, and talking with Santosh this afternoon when I got here on sort of the volumes that were starting to move out of Patriot in the Middle East, and the turnaround that he was getting on those. Some of these were next day. And I know for a fact, having made these, you know, that is impressive.
Sure.
Because if somebody said to me, hey, I need these quantities of these sizes and I need them tomorrow, I would laugh. I would say,
Right.
there's no way.
Yeah,
You can call anybody you want. No one's going to be able to do that.
Right.
And they pulled it off,
Wow.
which is amazing.
It's impressive.
It is, especially for the Ferrari of gaskets.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's not like they're asking for the Honda Accord.
Right. You can call any dealership and
And say, give me a Honda.
Yeah.
But a Ferrari's
Ferrari.
6 month out,
Right.
right? And you got to fill out an application before you
Right.
even get one.
Exactly.
Not that I know.
There's a lot of it. You gotta hope the eyes
What's that out in the parking lot?
Well,
It's a
awesome.
Raptor.
Awesome. So we sat here and listened to you guys talk about gaskets. You guys want to sit here and
Well, it's called hose and bolts, right? So we should probably bolts and hose. So it's boats and hose?
Bolts.
Bolts and hose. Not boats and hose.
And not HOES.
I can't-
Like flexible. Well, that doesn't really. HOSE.
Okay.
Because flexible can go.
Well, flexible can be either one.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
always does that?
When you're talking, so we talk about nuts, we talk about hose, I mean, studs, it always goes to a
Is there
place.
any good joke about gaskets though?
I'm sure Chris has
I don't think we have.
a good one.
About
A
gaskets?
gasket. What about that one you told me a long time ago, that you were giving a presentation with someone and about homogeneous gasket?
We probably should have. I still have nightmares about it.
Well, I had one. I guess we put up some stickers at a trade show once that said advertising on gaskets. It said, and we interestingly enough, we got the space above the urinals.
Yep.
As our advertising space.
That's a good spot.
Yeah, it's a good spot.
Yeah.
And we said, our gaskets, no matter how many times you shake it, they won't leak or something like that.
Ah, I like that, yeah.
That's about as good as I get. Yeah.
That's a good one. Do you have any more of those stickers?
I know. I might.
So let's talk
So the
bolts.
bolts, yeah.
So every week we do a segment called Parts of the Week. So we bring in some parts from the shop, show them off, talk a little bit about them. I always ask Chris, does he want to start with the big one or the small one? So
Since Ben's already asked.
yeah, we'll ask you, Ben. You want to go
The
big?
small one.
Small one first.
Really interested in it.
This is actually, so we're running a couple different sizes of this. It's probably hard to see from the distance. This is a stainless steel. The grade of stainless is 431. It is a metric part. So it's an M20 1.5 thread. It's less than an inch long. I'm not exactly sure of the end use, but I would guess it's threaded on and some fluid's gonna go through that hole. It's got a groove milled into the top. So it's just a really cool part. It's almost like a set screw.
Yeah,
almost,
it looks like a set screw.
But it looks like, but it has a hole in it, I'm assuming.
With a vent.
With a vent.
We can just make up really cool names for a lot of these parts, and nobody knows we're wrong.
Vented set screw.
Yes.
A vintage set
Vintage
screw.
slotted section screw.
So 431, which, I've sold a lot of metal in my days. I don't think I've ever sold 431, so it's an interesting part.
What you use 431 for?
I don't know.
I'm gonna be honest, I've never made a part.
So
400 series,
typically-
it's more martensitic, right?
Yes, typically that's used in a higher temperature. Yes, typically it's used in a higher temperature situation. So I'm assuming that's going to be temperature related. I'm guessing. But so there's a couple different sizes of that, and I thought it was cool because it's metric, it's fine thread.
It's probably got a little more carbon, right? So it's going to be magnetic.
Yeah, it's magnetic,
Right? So
exactly.
maybe there's a reason for it being
True that.
and needed.
Yep. So, cool part, interesting. You don't see that every day.
Do you ever get to ask them at the end of the day? Like,
Sometimes we do.
What the heck are you doing with this thing?
Sometimes we get pretty involved in it, but sometimes we just, hey.
We're blowing it up.
Or,
You know what? You don't care.
We don't care.
Make it out of it.
even sometimes our customer doesn't even know these, right? So,
right.
we're dealing with people who are brokering and, they have a customer, they have a customer somewhere else. So, sometimes we know, sometimes we deal directly with the application, and sometimes we just take a print, make a part, get out the door.
Got it.
So,
Makes sense.
Yep. 431 stainless steel.
What's next?
Santosh, what is that? Do you know what that is?
Machine part.
It is a machine part. You're absolutely right.
Great.
So this is this is mid-process. So there's something that part is missing. Can you tell me what is missing, Santosh?
Threads.
That's right. It's missing threads. Yeah.
Stick with isolation.
So that is, Chris,
That's a collar
a
stud.
collar stud.
A pre-collar stud.
Very common part. I think we probably showed off many of collar studs in parts of the week. The reason I brought this one is just because we're doing, I think, almost 1,000. There's 960 plus parts that we're making of that. So it's a 1 inch 8. I think it's 15 3/4 inches long.
What's the material?
B7.
B7.
Just standard
Standard
B7, heat exchangers.
Obviously started, that's the original skin, so that was the original diameter bar, so all of that is turned in.
Came out of 2-inch round bar, 1-inch 8, got a little dog point down here, and then it'll be fully threaded on both sides. So, cool part, we make all the time, know it very well. It's, I mean, a very commonly used part in refineries.
We love making it. It's easy,
Yeah.
it's quick, and we can make a lot of it.
Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, this is the cool thing about collar studs. Different, you'll see different configurations. Sometimes people just take a stud, right? And you'll just take an all-thread stud, and then they'll take a hex nut and round off the hex nut, and that will be your collar. So it'll be a two-piece construction collar stud.
And you can just provide an all-thread stud basically.
With a rounded nut.
Rounded nut.
And so that way they can install it, they can adjust
Just
the
where
nut.
to stop.
Right.
But then you can even have a set screw drilled on the inside of the so it locks into the stuff.
Exactly.
You can do that too.
Yeah. But I think this is more common. I see one-piece construction.
Is
big
it
collar, more?
Is it more efficient or effective to do it either? I mean,
It's cheaper to do it the other way.
it
Because if you
sounds
think about it,
because that's a lot of waste. when
that's
you
a
turn
lot
it
of turning down. I mean, you're taking a 2-inch bar, you're turning down, so you're throwing a lot of metal away.
Yeah.
On the all-thread stud, you already have all-thread rod out there, so you're just cutting a stud
Yeah.
at that point. And so really the only work you have to do is round it off.
And even if you have the machine and dog component, you're still very down.
Yeah, you still like doing that much.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
still it is not a finished part. You're not the
Not yet. They're not threaded.
We're gonna thread it.
Maybe both sides. Yeah?
Both sides.
Yeah, both sides. It'll have fully threaded to that collar on both ends. So that's currently on machine. They are just turning. They're just turning that operation as the first setup. But I mean, there's, like I said, hundreds and hundreds of those parts right now in the shop.
All right.
All right.
Well, the best for last.
We go big. They're big
Yeah.
daddy. See, I'm afraid I'm gonna.
Oh, you're not. Roll over it. Roll over it. Roll over it. Look at that.
But then I'm gonna put it right on top and it's gonna crack in half.
Thank God it is pointless.
Exactly. So this is a cool part. We made this last week. This is actually an extra piece. So this is 410 stainless steel. We started with 4¼ inch round bar because that was I think that's what we could find, get our hands on quickly. The flange part here is the biggest OD on the part, which finishes at approximately.
So that determines what the original OD is, so you gotta turn all the rest of that down. So that's a lot of trying to
That's a lot.
see.
That's about I think it's 3.87-ish is gonna be that flange there. So start with 4¼ so we obviously gotta turn all this part down. 27 inches approximately is the length in it. So a lot of machine time. You know, a lot of critical dimensions. You have these grooves that are very critical dimension. There's a very tight tolerance on the shoulder on this thing.
This is like O-ring grooves.
That's exactly what they are. Yep, that's exactly what they are. You got the head is drilled. Nothing's tapped in there. I'm just feeling around there, there's nothing's tapped in there. You do have the threads on this end, which you can kind of see here. There you go. So you have the threads on this end. There's actually a slot, a groove that has been milled into the top there, and then a hole drilled into that groove. So a lot of operations, very tight tolerance. So bar was brought in, this 410 anneal. It was sent out for a quench in 1 temper, brought back in and machined, and then the part was nitrided. So another,
That's what's giving it that finish, right?
yeah, it's just giving it. So it's like it kind of case hardens that outer shell. To it's going into some sort of shaft. So I'm assuming it's going to see a lot of vibration. So it needs a lot of strength, so it doesn't affect the performance of the
Right, very hard, directly, so obviously see something abrasive.
Yeah.
Yeah, abrasive and vibration and temperature. I mean, so that's another part of this whole part. So it was a one-piece. Customer came in, they needed one piece. Pretty critical, pretty hot. Got out the door in a few days.
I think it's the same with me. I would have a really hard time in your business not asking about 5,000 questions about what they're doing with it. But why do you need 3 O-rings? Like, what the hell is happening?
You get curious for sure.
Please tell me.
Once you get going and you got like 10 other quotes
Yeah,
behind it,
you
it's like,
lose
dude,
interest, right?
Get this one as a shot.
That's fair. That's
It's a
fair.
sketch.
That's
Just
fair.
tell us the tolerances.
Yeah. But it is a pretty neat part.
We
I mean,
geek
that's-
out on that.
That's a pretty cool part.
It is a cool part. And the fact that, before I thought it was really cool because obviously like most human beings, I like the shine. I like the jewelry. And then you nitride, and it just gets boring.
You know, that's
kind of dulls it up.
It's so funny you say that. I feel the exact opposite about
Really?
it.
You like it?
I love that flat
You
finish
like that
on there.
matte?
Yes.
You know, I'm asking you to drive a matte.
I have a matte black car.
I was gonna say
You're exactly
yeah.
right.
You know, I like the look, but
Yeah.
when it shines, you know, like that part, that
Yeah,
caught my
you're
eye. When I was
right.
walking through the
Yeah.
shop, I just saw that, and it just.
But all of them look like that. That's unique.
That's, I think
It
that
is
for me,
unique.
that's why I love Patina.
Patina.
That would be
That's
one of
why
my.
you got the classic cars and I don't.
Yes.
Right? You like that patina. Do you like the nut better when it was old and rusty or new and shiny?
You know, I don't know which one I like better. I like both of them.
Yeah.
But I prefer this.
This looks.
I think the shiny looks pretty good on the on the big
But
nut.
I got to say, I like
Yeah.
it.
You know what I might
Patina there,
say?
too.
One might say you need to have shiny nuts, not rusty nuts.
I would agree.
Yes.
Because I think that's one thing. I mean, people like, you know, patinaed cars.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Nobody
you got
says-
some antiques on the wall.
Nobody says I like patina nuts.
Nobody goes up and says, I want some rusty nuts.
No one says that.
I don't
I've
think
never
anyone's
heard
ever
of it.
that. Chris did go out and buy some rusty nuts
You did?
from a
did, yeah.
World War II.
Battleship, Texas, USS Texas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's some
It's a historical piece of
Nuts
history.
holding on the 5-inch cannons that were on the deck.
That's pretty cool.
And those have seen some actual wartime. So
a lot too, right? Yeah.
That,
It's activity.
the big nut, rusty nut, people will love next generation. History, Patriot Sealing. 100 years later, oh,
I think so. Yeah.
That is true. I wonder if in 100 years where that nut will be.
Probably right there.
You think? No, I'm thinking it's gonna
No one's gonna move it.
It's not going to burn down.
Yeah.
It's going to be there. It's not going to rust.
No.
So I don't know if anyone's noticed. I mean, there's no one here. It's not loud. The brewery has closed.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the last episode in
No way.
Ingenious Brewery.
No way.
But what people don't know, Bryce, is that we have signed an agreement to purchase this building.
We have procured Ingenious.
We have laid
The
down-
building.
Yeah.
So this will now be Patriot Bolt's,
Second
I
location.
guess Patriot Bolt's west. That's east, right?
Right, that's going to be
West.
south, north and south here, Bryce.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
It's close enough.
challenge.
I wouldn't have.
I was pointing
You,
that
you,
way.
you know what? You could have said it and wanted it. Like, he's right.
Exactly.
North, south, that's Patriot
All
Bolt.
right, fair enough.
So we haven't closed on it yet, obviously, but we put down earnest money and we signed a contract, so it looks to be headed that direction.
Congratulations.
It is exciting. Cheers. Expansion, Patriot Bolt.
Cheers. Good job.
Chalice, glad to have you guys here. 40. 40.
we started here podcasting and came and buying this building.
Yeah. We didn't know it at the time, but that's the way it worked out.
Are they going to leave any of these for you?
I'm sure
I bought plenty of these things, so I've got like a year's supply, don't worry.
Do you like it?
It's good.
It's a good beer.
It's great.
And they have, I mean,
Which is why I'm a little confused as to why it's closed, I guess.
You know, it's a tough game.
Just
It's a
like,
lot of
just like
competition.
where this is going, we don't know why it's closing. We
it's
don't
a,
know.
it's a tough business.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is.
And it's a tough location. And I mean, there's a variety of things. I think COVID, you know, messed them up a little bit too. I mean, their cost of goods went through the roof after, you know, things came back. So good old COVID, man, messed up a lot of
And this
businesses.
is a tough business. You think about how many microbreweries there are.
There's a lot.
In a 10-mile radius. It's very competitive.
But I've been to many, and I'm telling you, James here is the guy. And so if anyone is looking for a badass brewmaster, James is the guy. I mean, he makes some of the best
I don't
craft
know
beer.
James, but I can second that after
Great stuff.
drinking the beer.
I mean, I don't think I've ever came here and had a beer. I was like, oh, that's rough. But I've been to many of other breweries.
Yeah.
Said that.
So we're thinking about what we're going to do with this building. We're going to pack it full of equipment, stuff to make bolts, different processes. I think we're going to keep this.
That was going to be my very next question.
Yeah, so this
Are you
has
going
to
to keep
be-
the beer? I think you have to keep it.
It has to be part of the podcast forever now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it will stay somehow, some way. This will be our backdrop for podcasts for years to come. I think we need more like viewers, listeners, though. I think there's still like 12 people that follow us.
You know, they're the most important ones.
That is true.
It's,
Very
it's,
loyal.
it's 12 more that would listen to me on a normal day.
So what have we been talking for 20 minutes? I can guarantee no one is listening to us now. We've lost like the viewership, and it's the first minute it's like 12 people, and then minute 20 it's 0.
So everybody's gonna go, oh, you're buying that building? We said it on the podcast. It was 19 minutes and 54 seconds in, but it was there.
Because I think you actually said that to me. At one time I was like, oh, it's happening. Like I said it on the podcast. Oh, right. I just forgot.
Yeah. We just assume everybody knows.
It's fun. We should start quizzing people when they say, "Oh, I watch your podcast." We should find out something that we said at the end of the podcast. Like, ask them.
You should say the same thing at the end of every
the
podcast.
same thing.
And then see if they recognize.
Like one word. We
Yeah.
should start that.
Like
We should say one word.
One
like,
word. Yeah.
An hour.
Yeah, whatever. Maybe Mr. Rogers said it.
Yeah, something.
He said it, right?
Right. What's our saying?
So Santosh, how do you say bolts and hose in Indies?
I think there is-
Bolts and hose. Now,
Probably doesn't
you have to
exist.
translate that properly.
Yeah.
I really
So how do you say bolts?
Bolts.
That's how you say it?
Yeah. I mean,
And then what about hose? Like a fire
Not a word that exists.
pipe.
Okay, pipe.
Bolts and pipe.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Not
that's how you say it in Indies, bolts and hose.
That's all
In
it is.
Spanish, how do you say it? Tornillo?
I don't know. We need to do some research.
I'd have to get my phone
I'm
out
checking
there.
Google.
Google
I don't want to
Translate.
say it. The only hose I know how to say in Spanish is the bad hose. So, I don't want to translate that, but
That's
tornillo,
not the one we want.
tornillo is bolt.
Okay, all right. And then empaque is gasket.
Empaque?
Empaque.
Okay.
Empaque.
But you don't know hose.
I don't know. I'm sure it's gonna be something obvious.
It's going to be like Jose.
I think that's a name.
That's true. All right. On that note.
On that note, Jose. I could say Jose.
Yeah. Jose.
Jose. There it is.
Jose.
I'm kind of pausing, I'm waiting for Santosh to find it.
There is, but Sitkani, I never heard this one.
Sitkani.
Sitkani.
For what?
For hose?
Hose actually.
That was bolting.
Sitkani.
Bolting was Sitkani.
Oh, okay, Sitkani.
Look, we got a FedEx truck coming to pick it up. We got a couple crates of isolation kits that are shipping up.
They are shipping out today.
That was
I
for,
saw those.
Yeah.
for our international customers.
Nalli. Hose is Nalli.
Nali. So, Sitkani?
Sitkani.
Sitkani and Nali.
All right,
So we'll wrap this up.
cheers to Sikani.
Sitkani and Nali.
So, Patriot Bolt, Patriot Sealing, Patriot Fluid Transfer. Mr. Kramer, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming
Thanks for
on.
having me.
Mr. Kumar,
you, sir.
always good to see you, sir. Like, follow, comment, share, do whatever you want. Keep watching, ask questions. Appreciate everyone.
Have a great weekend, guys. Adios.
Cheers.